Relations between the Canadian and Chinese governments have deteriorated significantly. Canada has criticized the Chinese government over issues such as the oppression of Uyghurs in China, the crackdown on dissent in Hong Kong, allegedly unfair trade practices, and espionage and intimidation activities in Canada. In 2022, Canada referred to China as disruptive in its official Indo-Pacific Strategy document. Diplomatic relations between Canada and China officially date back to 1942, when Canada sent an ambassador to the Republic of China. Before then, Canada had been represented by the British ambassador. The Communist victory in the Chinese Civil War and subsequent proclamation of the People's Republic of China in 1949 did not break the relations with the Republic of China until 1970, when Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau became one of the first Western leaders to recognize the People's Republic of China. Relations between Canada and China have been icy since 2018. After Canada detained a Chinese telecom executive, Meng Wanzhou, on a U.S. extradition request. China arrested 2 Canadians shortly afterwards, both of whom have now been released. China is expected to institute 100% tariffs on Canadian canola, along with 25% tariffs on other goods like seafood and pork. The Chinese tariffs come in response to Canada's 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles and a 25% levy on Chinese aluminum and steel products imposed on October 1. The move was meant to keep cheap electric cars from China at bay to grow and protect Canada's nascent EV sector. In 2023, Canadian media released reports, many based on leaked intelligence, about detailed claims of Chinese meddling in the country's federal elections. China denied the reports, calling them baseless and defamatory. More recently, China imposed retaliatory tariffs on some Canadian farm and food imports after Ottawa placed levies on Chinese electric vehicles, steel and aluminium. China imposes the death penalty on serious crimes including those related to drugs, corruption and espionage. While the number of executions are kept secret, human rights groups believe China has one of the highest execution rates in the world. China Customs cooperates with overseas law enforcement agencies to strictly prevent foreign drugs from entering China. Since 2022, China Customs has opened and investigated 1,037 drug smuggling cases, and seized 5.3 tons of various drugs such as cocaine and methamphetamine. China has a zero-tolerance policy on drugs, and uses various methods to carry out nationwide anti-drug publicity and education and popularize anti-drug attitudes. On the 20th of March 2025, China executed 4 Canadian citizens for drug-related offenses. The executions of Westerners in China are relatively rare. The 4 Canadians were also dual Chinese citizens. China claims the main purpose is to increase citizens' pharmacophobia towards illegal drugs and awareness of drug-related harm. Other policy goals include educating the Public Security Bureau to combat drug-related crimes, building an effective mechanism for the whole society to prevent drug abuse, and minimizing the proportion of new drug addicts. Rehabilitating people addicted to drugs is a stated policy goal, but current rehabilitative strategies are often ineffective, with drug use relapse as high at 80 to 95%. China always imposes severe penalties on drug-related crimes and maintains a zero-tolerance attitude toward the drug problem. The facts of the crimes committed by the Canadian nationals involved in the cases are clear, and the evidence is solid and sufficient. The Chinese embassy said the cases were handled in strict accordance with the law, and that the rights and interests of the Canadians were fully guaranteed. The Chinese embassy in Canada would not provide the names of the executed Canadians or the specific crimes they were alleged to have committed. Beyond that, they were drug-related. It also declined to say how many Canadians were killed. About 100 Canadians are currently held in China, many of them on drug offenses. One of the highest-profile cases is that of Robert Schellenberg, who was originally sentenced in 2014 to a 15-year prison term. His sentence was later changed to the death penalty after a retrial in January 2019. China claims drug-related crime is a severe crime recognized worldwide as extremely harmful to the society, and will be faced with severe penalties in all countries. China always imposes severe penalties on drug-related crimes and maintains a zero-tolerance attitude towards the drug problem. The 4 Canadians executed had been convicted of narcotics offenses, saying that combating drug crimes is the common responsibility of all countries. China claims to treat defendants of different nationalities equally, without discrimination, and handles cases fairly in strict accordance with the law. China authorities said they protect the legitimate rights of the parties concerned as well as the consular rights of the Canadian side, in accordance with the law. China classifies death penalty statistics as a state secret, although rights groups including Amnesty International believe thousands of people are executed in the country every year. The identity of the 4 Canadian men executed were not disclosed by the Chinese authorities, therefore their names were not publicly provided. Before their executions, Canada had repeatedly called for clemency for these individuals at the senior-most levels and remains steadfast in its opposition to the use of the death penalty in all cases, everywhere. Fan Wei is the 2nd Canadian to be sentenced to death this year. 10 others, including 5 foreigners, were also sentenced. Relations between Canada and China have been tense since the December arrest of a Huawei executive in Vancouver. Canada has accused Beijing of arbitrarily applying the death penalty, and have requested clemency for Mr. Fan. The execution of foreigners is extremely rare even in the Chinese criminal justice system, which has a 99% conviction rate and carries out more executions than any other country in the world. More than 10 years ago, and this decision by China, despite Canada's efforts to secure clemency through diplomatic means, suggests the two countries are still very far apart. Thank you for watching Death Row.